we put front and center, instead of like, fearful things, but more like, hey, like, do you want to feel good?
Yeah.
Do you want to be healthy? Well, the restaurant industry can give you those two things, the feeling good, being seen, being around your peers. And if you choose to support restaurants that are practicing sustainable farming and pulling goods and resources from the community, then you're making your community stronger and you're putting good food into your body. What are your priorities as a consumer? Is it convenience? Is it new shoes every couple of weeks? Is it fresh threads or like some stupid thing you saw on Instagram that is funny? Like, where are you putting your money? Because the resources are there.
Right.
It's just a matter of prioritizing what's most important, your health and your community.
Yeah.
And if you want to be healthy and happy, we can all achieve that.
You are listening to Granted Goodness, the show where we interview New Hampshire people making the world a better place. My name is Andy DeMeo, and today's episode was recorded in Treeline Outfitters in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. My guest today is Eric Cacciatore. Eric hails from New Hampshire, and he is the creator and host of the Restaurant Unstoppable podcast, where he travels the globe interviewing the world's top restaurateurs on the secret sauce to their success. We talk about Eric's path to podcasting, his former career as an aviator, how he strives to live up to the original meaning of the words hospitality, authenticity, purpose, and many other things on this episode of Granted Goodness. I hope you enjoy it. Eric James Cacciatore.
Yes, sir.
Is that how you say it?
That's how you say it.
Welcome to Granted Goodness.
Thanks for having me, man.
I am so excited that you're here. You run the amazing show Restaurant Unstoppable.
That is right.
Which has recently been described to me as one of the top restaurant podcasts in the entire world.
Who described it as that?
Cody.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Cody.
I told him, he said, who are you talking to today? And I said, this guy from Restaurant Unstoppable. And his jaw dropped. He said, you're talking to Eric? He's got that's one of the top shows. He's coming on your show. And I was like, yeah, is that so surprising? He wanted to come on Granted Goodness. Anyway, I love that you're here because this is like, you are type 1A, the perfect example of, this is like New Hampshire. We punch above our weight. People think we're this little podunk state. Nobody lives here. Nothing happens here. But here we have a native son doing really cool and important work.
Thank you, man. And that everything you just said means a lot. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
man.
So tell me, give us the whole story. How does someone end up, have you always really loved restaurant? How did you end up doing this?
So my parents opened a restaurant when I was 3 years old in East Kingston, New Hampshire.
Okay.
And that was like my daycare. That's like where I grew up. And this little kid is running around his parents' restaurant. They had that restaurant for 10 years. I always thought that I wanted to open my own restaurant, but my parents kind of talked me out of it. They're like, have you learned nothing?
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, this is not easy work. You do not want this. We work so hard, so you don't have to. So you can go do better things and grow your life.
Yeah.
They always used to say you don't own a restaurant owns you. So they talked me out of it. And I pursued a career in aviation. I became a commercial pilot.
Get out.
And I was working in restaurants all throughout my aviation career as a way to make money, because you don't really make money in aviation until you get to the majors. Even as a captain for a regional, you may be making anywhere between 60 and 100, depending how long you stay there.
Yeah.
And then when you go to a major, you typically take a pay cut to have a higher ceiling.
Wow.
So usually people don't get there until they're late. If they're doing really good, their late 20s, mid 30s is usually when they join the majors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
wait, so how, was that also, I might as well ask, how does someone become a pilot? How did that all happen?
90-degree turn, huh?
Yeah.
So, I became a pilot. I went to Daniel Webster College in New Hampshire. It's no longer Daniel Webster College. But, originally I thought about maybe joining the military, but I'm colorblind, so I knew that wasn't going to be an option.
Sure.
So we kind of canceled that as an option pretty quick. And then I went to Daniel Webster College in Nashua, like I said, and just had a degree in aviation flight operations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you get started, I guess.
Well, there is always an interesting, a couple of my friends have become amateur pilots. A friend of mine now, he's somewhere in Colorado or wherever, and I was talking to my friend the other day. He's pouring like all his money into getting his pilot, thing. He's like, it's not cheap. You got to do the flight hours.
Yeah.
But to fly though,
it's a cool experience, man. But I will say this: when you were 15, how bad did you want to drive a car?
pretty bad.
And what's it like today?
I don't need. Yeah, exactly.
It's just another.
I find
cool
other
thing.
things to do when I drive. So.
I have some amazing stories. My career in aviation brought me to parts of the world that probably would have never been able to spend time. I spent a year in Saipan flying passengers, mostly Chinese tourists, between the Marianas Islands, which was really
seriously cool.
It was really cool. And like I got, you see, it opens up doors, and it was definitely a cool experience. I ultimately resigned from aviation when I was 26 years old. Sure. I made it as far as the regionals.
Yeah.
And the truth was I was never a natural born pilot. So I think I was in love with the idea of freedom. And I just recently learned that freedom is one of my number one core values. Hey, how appropriate. We're on the Live Free or Die Granite State podcast. Yeah. So I love freedom. And when I was like naive, like young teenager, and even when I was a kid, I just remember looking at airplanes flying overhead and just being like, oh my God, like they can go anywhere they want to go. Right. Like that is freedom.
Yeah.
Like I remember I wanted to be a bird when I was a kid, like so I could just fly away.
Solid career path.
So like natural progression, I'll be a commercial pilot.
Yeah.
Right. Never really had like the natural skills, technical skills. I'm more socially, emotionally intelligent individual.
Sure.
So I had to work really hard. So your friend had said it costs a lot of money to be a commercial pilot. I spent $200,000 in my career to become a commercial pilot. Yeah. And it was a tough decision to resign when I was 26 years old because I put all that money into it, but I just ultimately realized I wasn't doing what I was meant to do. I wasn't happy. I'm also dyslexic.
Yeah.
And I held that back. Like I didn't tell anybody about that.
Right.
So, I had to get on ADD medication to get through school.
Yeah.
I was on it in high school. It was illegal for me to take it as a commercial pilot.
Right.
So I took it to study, but then I got off of it when I was flying professionally because I was afraid if I ever had to get drug tested, it would be an issue.
Yeah.
So long story short, I was never meant to be a commercial pilot.
Right.
And I was terrified that I was going to do something stupid, ruin my career, or hurt people. So that was like over me all the time. So $200,000 in debt, resigned, 26 years old, went back to school for marketing and hospitality because that's what I found myself looking forward to my part-time jobs, being around people that I love, which is our restaurant people.
Yeah. Oh man, that's hold on. I'm going to pause you for a moment. I'm going to adjust your mic.
Oh, how's that?
No, these are the shittiest mics in the world. I'm also going to like pick your brain for like what good mic
man.
to use.
I use the Heil PR40.
That's good. See, I don't even know what that is.
Well, I'll show right here. Kidding. Boom.
That's perfect. Okay. Well, Eric, your story is so funny because like you're doing a thing that, I mean, you've thought about this obviously, but that many people were like, man, flying the dream, right? Like you look up at the sky, it's so romantic, I mean, I even have this like pet fantasy of like, oh, wouldn't be so cool to like, if it was easier and I could just like get in a plane and do it, like I would love to fly a plane, right? But is it worth all the trouble? I don't know. But the idea that like you're there at this point in your life and your career being like, oh man, I gotta go back to being a pilot when what I really want to do is like I'm enjoying these other things that I do part-time, right?
Right. I think my natural inclination had always been hospitality. I love, like I said, emotionally, socially intelligent. I can read a room.
Yeah.
I care a lot about what people think of, like I think about other people, right? And that has always appealed to me. So, I mean, I kind of always had like this like dark cloud over me as a, no pun not intended, as a commercial pilot,
right?
Where like I just knew I wasn't really supposed to be doing it, but like I had something to prove, and I wanted like this, I don't know, like, and you think that it's freedom, but then when you get into it, you're like, oh my God, there's a lot of regulations.
Yeah.
Like I got to stay on this really skinny path in the air. I can't deviate left or right or go up or down without getting a clearance.
Right.
Like it's not freedom.
Yeah.
And even when I became a commercial pilot, like the thought was I could use my license in my career to go see the world, but it was during a time right after 2008, the recession, 9/11, that like you really couldn't use your benefits as a commercial pilot because they were so good at filling airplanes that there were no free seats to jump seat or do anything like that, or to like, fly for free. So it was kind of like I just chose the wrong path.
Right. Well, I mean, there's all this. I mean, like my conception of what commercial airlining is like is still stuck in like it's a combination between like Catch Me If You Can, right? Where, you know, Leo DiCaprio plays the guy, Frank Abagnale, who like he impersonates these 3 different careers, and one of them is a pilot. And it looks very fun and sexy when he does it. It's like that and this old Studio Ghibli movie, Porco Rosso, which is like a kid's movie about like airplane pilots in the Adriatic Sea in World War I. So neither of those are particularly grounded in reality. And that's just like when I think of flying, it's just like romanticism and adventure. But
yeah, you know what else is not grounded in reality? The hospitality industry.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a huge romantic air about that too, you know? So I think that's kind of foreshadowing a little bit.
Yeah.
Part of my message today is just trying to educate other restaurant owners who want to open restaurants. Like, one, it's meant to be inspiring. Like, you can do it too if you really have the passion and the desire to be a restaurant owner. Hear stories of other people who have done it. It's part to be empowering, not only like the path they took, but like literally what they learned the hard way and what you can do differently to have better success and to learn through other people's mistakes. But also to like back to like just this idea of like sharing reality of like, listen, like the restaurant industry is meant to be, we are like transporting you to an experience. Like we're helping you escape reality. What you think the restaurant industry is as a guest isn't the reality of what happens behind the scenes.
Sure.
So like also kind of like, I can't remember what you said, relating it to Catch Me If You Can and all of that.
Yeah.
What were the words you used?
That it's my understanding of flying is from that movie, which I mean, it's kind of funny because the point of that whole movie is that, you know, this guy is able to deceive people. Like he's really good at deceiving others and convincing.
Well, that's what the restaurant industry does. It deceives people as to like, we're here to create this experience for you. But so people, I think, get romanticized, I think was the word you used,
that's it.
of what the hospitality industry is all about. But the reality is it's a grind. And if you're in the black operating, you're doing better than most people. But to be operating between 15 and 20%, like you need to have a special operation. So, yeah, I guess that's my point, is like I'm trying to help not just the people who aspire to own restaurants to realize like this is what you're in for.
Yeah.
But also I think we need to kind of help the consumer realize what these people are doing every day to make sure that you can escape and have this experience. And when they increase their rates a little bit just to offer their employees like a better salary and like security and benefits and like maybe some better work-life balance, like don't freak out when your burger costs $20, you know, like
support what are you paying for if it's so cheap,
right?
So well, I've seen this, I don't remember what business it is, but I see these like viral images online of like some chain in Texas, I think, where there's like a menu and it's like these are the prices of all the food, and at the bottom it's like, oh, and by the way, all the people who work here have like a 401k plan, paid time off, they get paid really well, you know, like all these different things. And it's like, so if you think our prices are high, it's because we build into our business model, you know, a really strong workplace.
Is this in Austin?
Yeah, I think so.
I think I had them on the show. I've done 1,100 episodes.
So right.
Remember the name of the restaurant?
You probably did.
Yeah, that sounds familiar though.
Oh my God. I can't even believe I'm talking to you. The fact that you've done 1,100, the fact that I get to talk to you, I mean, I would love to reach a threshold like that someday, you know, and I'm just getting started.
For what it's worth, man, where you are with 34 episodes was a lot further ahead than where I was. So you're doing great work. Keep it up.
Others have walked so that I can run at Granite Goodness. Man. All right. So take us through there. Like, I'm very excited to hear your like restaurant touring. We all go to restaurants, you know, they're a very important business. It's a very important sector. And you highlight like the reality of it, the real stories, why people are passionate about it, what it's like behind the scenes. You have, I mean, the fact that you have like 1,100 plus, right, hours of just like experience and talking to people about it. Like, how did that whole journey begin? Take us there. So,
bringing you back to where I resigned from aviation and went back to school for marketing and hospitality. Yeah. The thought was I want to work in the restaurant industry, but I have $200,000 of school loan debt. There's no way I'm working in restaurants or buying a restaurant with that amount of debt. So if I can't work in restaurants, I want to work with restaurants. And I started with marketing classes.
Yeah.
Because I thought maybe I would learn sales, like get into sales or of some sort.
Sure.
Right. I didn't know what I wanted to sell, but I knew that if I couldn't work in restaurants, I wanted to work with restaurant people, helping restaurant people, whether that be. At the time, I was thinking wine sales, because that's one of those things where it's like you're not selling things to people, things that they don't need.
Yeah.
It's like you're almost like an extension of the team as a sales rep. Like, let me understand your menu and like make recommendations and help you find like something that makes sense for you specifically. So it's more like in service of, and then if you serve well, you get paid well as a sales rep.
Right.
So I like that approach. So I ended up working at Jeweltown Vineyards in Southampton, New Hampshire, as the assistant winemaker to learn about wine. And it was during that time that I discovered podcasts. So originally focused on marketing, was steered to also minor in or focus on hospitality. So dual majoring marketing and hospitality at Great Bay Community College.
Yeah.
And during those, it was actually a class that I had where the professor stood up at the front of the classroom and he said, it was my first sales class. And he said, who here listens to podcasts? And this is 2012.
Yeah.
And nobody raised their hand. Wow. And this was a night class, keep in mind. So there wasn't a lot of people. He walked out of the classroom, he looked left and he looked right. You could see that like little sliver, like, you know, like the classroom doors, like the little window and the wooden door with like a small window. You could see him looking to make sure there was nobody in the hallway.
Right.
Can I curse on this podcast?
Yeah, sure.
He said, "You've got to be fucking kidding me." And he screamed it.
Right.
And he walked back in and he was trying to make a point.
Right.
There's like this huge opportunity to learn
this
what
is a marketing group. Supposedly.
Yeah. I'm like, well, just like go listen to podcasts, because whatever it is that you're passionate about, whatever it is you're curious about, there's likely a podcast for you. So your homework assignment is to go find 3 podcasts on 3 different topics and then report back what you found and what you learned.
Right.
So those 3 topics for me were entrepreneurism, marketing, and hospitality.
Yeah.
So tons of marketing podcasts, tons of entrepreneurial podcasts, 0 hospitality. So I kind of failed at my assignment, right?
Sure.
But that was also my first clue that there wasn't a solid restaurant industry podcast at this time. So I just, at that point on, I was hooked on podcasts, like hooked. And I was working as the assistant winemaker for Jeweltown Vineyards. So I was in the basement all day by myself, just listening at times to all this audio, like all this like inspirational, this is how I did it, like personal growth, marketing, and like entrepreneurial podcast, like 18 hours of audio a day.
Wow.
You know? And I mentioned earlier that I was dyslexic, so I never really got into reading. But once I found this audio, so audio books and audio podcasts, like the ceiling just got blown off for me, because apparently I'm a real good auditory learner.
I mean, you must be.
Right.
All the people you've talked to.
Well, yeah. So it took me about maybe 3 or 4 months to be like, where is this podcast? Why is nobody doing it? And then I heard a quote on another show saying, if you're looking for something and you can't find it, there's a good chance that you're not the only person looking, and that's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, if you make your life about helping enough other people achieve what they want in life, you can have anything in life.
Right.
Those are the 2 things I needed to hear. And like, that's when I decided that I was going to launch my own restaurant business podcast. That was going to be the podcast I was looking for, which was just going to successful restaurateurs and sharing their story, and then, you know, helping other people who are in the position to open restaurants become successful. And if I could do that, then I would be able to open my own restaurant someday.
Yeah.
May have been scared straight. I don't know if I want to open my own restaurant anymore, but I mean, I definitely do want to be associated. And if I were to open a restaurant, I would have to have like $1 million in the bank to burn of my own, and like a team of people around me. So I would maybe in the future like to get involved if I had money to invest and support somebody else. But I don't want to be opening a restaurant when I'm 45 years old. You know, at this, that's where I'd be tracking at this point. So
yeah. Well, the fact that like maybe you can get the fun parts of doing it, right? Like you can still cook whenever you want. You can always cook for friends and family.
Right.
And, you know, the hospitality piece, right? Like you said, you're able to get, well, there's kind of a win-win here. No one's tackling this niche. I'm really jazzed about it, and it's in their interest to come on and share their story. And if I give them a good platform for it, you know, I don't know. I mean, so take me through that. Like when you think of what you're passionate about with hospitality and entrepreneurship and storytelling, like what does it mean for you to go into a restaurant? Like what parts of that experience, you know, stick out to you? Or, I mean, you must have quite a... Before
I answer that question, I want to give a shout out to Professor David Mazer, who was the professor who turned me on to podcasting.
Professor Dave.
Yeah. I don't think he's teaching anymore. Maybe he is, but shout out Professor Mazer. For me, I think what I love about the hospitality industry is I've always loved bringing people together. So even when I was in college, I was throwing the parties, and like, you know, we were always, every year we had a Catch-a-Palooza like party thrown in my parents' backyard. And there's something about just bringing people together. And I always thought that I was passionate about food. I still love to cook, but I think what I was really passionate about was this underlying ability of food to bring people together. And I think it's in our nature as humans to just come around. There would always be a fire, you know, and there would always be food. And when you have food and a fire, it's like this primal instinct to
We've been doing that for thousands
to huddle
of years.
together and to share stories and to talk about aliens or like whatever the fudge out there.
Aliens always come up.
Yeah, like aliens or like the world issues. And I think it's just something that we almost lost in society, where we just don't come together anymore and just talk like not like we have the answers, but just like listen to different perspectives and like hear stories. And I just love that. I love bringing people together. So I think that's the draw for me. I think I also love being seen and valued for bringing people together. I think if you look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, above you know, your physiological needs, food and like warmth, you need security, and above that it's being seen. So I think when you are good at something, I think the whole reason why we want to self-actualize and find our purpose is so we can be seen. It's like a circle. So we can be seen and valued by the community, by the tribe, as I have a place here. I have a purpose here. You value me. I'm not, if you didn't have purpose or value in a tribe 10,000 years ago, the tribe would say, you're dead weight, get out of here. Like go be a part of the tribe. You know, contribute some way. I think it's like in our DNA to want to contribute and to be seen for our worth. So
that your place in a community is about function, but it's also like a spiritual, I feel seen and am valued here. Yeah,
so I think that's what always drew me to the hospitality industry. I cared, and I was really good. I was never like the rock star server or chef. I always did really well in supportive roles because I liked being seen by my you know, colleagues as like, like when Eric's on as the host. And that was my favorite role in a restaurant, as like maitre d' host. Like I was reading a room, I was taking like trays away from servers, and like I was like, you have so much control over a dining room in that host position. It's, in my opinion, the most underutilized position in the restaurant industry. If you have a seasoned host that gives an F, like that can make or break a dining experience for everybody. Because if you get somebody in the weeds, or if you're not paying attention to if this guest doesn't like that guest for whatever reason, or like if you can't pull information to give the server a heads up of like, this is an anniversary, or you know, like it's just that you can be so intentional from that position and like really like orchestrating a collective like group experience.
Wow. So I've never heard of anyone talk like the fact that you can, I mean, I hear people talk about emceeing, but never like hosting or being a host in a restaurant as kind of an artistic almost like opportunity.
Some of the world's best restaurateurs started as hosts. If you look at like Danny Meyer, for example, do you know that name, Danny Meyer?
No.
Union Square Hospitality, Shake Shack.
No,
you've heard. So Shake Shack.
No, I've heard of Shake Shack.
Like Union Square Cafe. What was it? Gramercy Tavern. These are like big New York City. But he, I think there was a period where he was on a tear, a run where he had more James Beard awards and like 5 stars and like than any other restaurant group in New York. The Union Square Hospitality Group.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
he was a common like path then for people to like they get acquainted with or skilled at like the social aspect of restaurateuring, and then they leverage that into
it's not just the guests. Like, I mean, if you're a restaurateur, really your superpower, if you could have any superpower, is your ability to attract onto yourself the rock stars in all the different verticals of like a good restaurant needs to have a good chef, needs to have a good bartender, needs to attract onto themselves good people and good servers and backup house workers. And when you get that, talent. It's like, okay, like if I don't create opportunity for this person, or if I don't give them value as an employee, they're just going to take that talent and go somewhere else, or they're going to go open their own restaurant. So if you can see that talent and choose to grow that talent and provide opportunity for that talent, then you can benefit from that talent as like a business partner.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the most successful restaurateurs recognize that it's not about me. It's about my ability to create opportunity to help enough other people achieve what they want in life.
Yeah.
And when you push people away by giving them opportunity, they end up not going anywhere.
Yeah.
They tend to stick around.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's actually something I wanted to ask you about a little bit, is like, this is how little I know. My perception, I mean, even from personal experience, like I've worked in a couple of restaurants, always back of house, just as like a cook or something. Never anywhere like great, you know, just like random sandwich shops, you know, either in Boston or in out in like Keene, New Hampshire. And I liked it, but it was never like a job I wanted to have forever, right? And so my personal perception of like a lot of the restaurant industry is that like it's a really hard place to work, you know, like when I think of the average job of a line cook, like it's not particularly glamorous, it's not particularly well compensated. Is that, but then I know like your work and all the, you know, there's a lot of media about cooking and shows and chefs, and I'm like, are there a lot of people out there who are like really making a decent living, like cooking full time? Or is it most like, I don't know, kind of harder jobs and they do it for passion? Like, you
got to do it for passion.
Yeah.
If you're looking to make it big as a cook in a restaurant, that's not gonna happen unless your passion is, or your goals are to be the chef of a restaurant or chef owner of a restaurant. The only way to make substantial money in the restaurant industry is by owning the business and scaling that business. And or, you know, I think that's one other thing that I'm trying to help people understand, that if you are passionate about food, then there are other avenues you can take. You can be a private chef. You can do catering. You can do, like, you don't have to open a restaurant to do what you love. You could do meal kits, you know, like there's different things you can do. You can create your own YouTube channel and be an influencer if that's what you want to do. It's the 21st century, you know, like, I think part of the value I add is also helping people know that there is no one path. So talking to people from all walks of the restaurant industry, whether they are a multi-100 unit franchise or a small, like 15 unit corporation, or a mom and pop, or a pop-up. Like I had the boys from Dead Proof Pizza on the show. I don't know if you know them. But, you know, in the 21st century, if you're opening a restaurant today, in the year 2024, it wasn't the same in 1995. The world is different. There's different assets you can leverage. There's different ways you can break in. So I'll talk to that pop-up because they're doing something that the person I could interview who is 30 years into their career never had the ability or the resources to take the path to get into the industry that there are today. So it's like offering that perspective. Do you find that, I mean, that's so cool too, that like I wish, and I'm glad you're here. Like I think of all the kind of wisdom and experience that like you just imbibe from the sheer volume of 1,100 episodes of talking to restaurateurs. 1,139.
Oh my God! Like that's incredible.
Thank you.
I mean, and all the stories there. Like, man, I mean, you're already doing it, but like, what are you've given some already, but like I do just want to ask point blank, like, what do you wish more people understood about restaurateuring, either on the customer side, right, which is, you know, you shared, you know, you wish that more people understood like all the work that goes into having a nice experience, right? But even on the you know, the restaurateuring side, I mean, even curious, like, do you find most of your listeners, you know, are they like foodie people who go to restaurants, or are they like restaurateurs themselves? Or
80% of my listeners are owner operators.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I heard two questions there.
Yeah,
what do I want people who are diners of restaurants? So what do I want the consumer to know about the restaurant industry? And what do I want future and current restaurant operators to know about the restaurant industry? So starting with like the restaurant operator, I think everything I just said, you know, like there is a million and one different ways to be successful in running a restaurant. So when I started this podcast, like I had like this vision of like a visionary, or like visual, like tool of like, I want to shine the light on the path to success in the restaurant industry. And now like after almost, I would say like 7 years of like interviewing hundreds and hundreds of restaurateurs from around the country, majority of which I traveled to that market, sat in their restaurant and like was in their restaurant interviewing them. I don't want to say I almost went crazy, but I felt like I was going crazy because I couldn't pinpoint a single path.
Sure.
And I was like, I feel like the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know anything, and that it's just such a complicated thing, the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
But I think what I learned is that really it all starts with you as a restaurateur. Your success behind every great restaurant's a great person, and your business success will never surpass your personal success as an individual. So I think it starts with just understanding, like, also success is relative to the person, to the beholder. So what is successful for you might not be what somebody else deems as success. So what are your goals as a restaurateur? Do you want to scale to 100,000 like restaurants across the world, like McDonald's or Subway, or do you want to be a chef?
Right.
Like, do you want to cook food that you love and educate people about a cuisine that you're passionate about? Do you want your hands to touch the food every day?
Yeah.
Don't look at other people and say, that's how you do it.
Right.
Like, what I love that I can do is I can offer a myriad of perspectives.
Yeah.
And then and help you see the world from all these different perspectives to chart your own path.
A menu, perhaps.
Yes, a menu. Well done.
A success menu.
So I think you really have to be intentional. Success is, I think, Western culture defines success through a lot of material good, like money. How much money do I have? What's my status? And I think that the restaurant industry is plagued with ego. And I think that a lot of I am kind of coined this expression that I believe marketing is the bane of human existence, because I'm not saying you shouldn't market as a business, but I think that marketing is a giant industry. Yeah. And there's a lot of like award culture, for example.
Right.
So like, is success in the restaurant industry a Michelin star?
Yeah.
Is it a James Beard Award? Or is it making an impact on the community, the employees that you have, and getting up every day and being excited to go to do the thing you love?
Yeah.
And if you're chasing status, if you're chasing recognition, if you're chasing ego, listen, there's only one award that goes out in the Northeast every year for best restaurateur out of hundreds, if not like more like tens of thousands of restaurants.
Wow.
The probability of you being that restaurant is so slim to none that you will never be happy if that's what you're choosing to pursue. And once you get there, at what cost?
Yeah.
What did you sacrifice?
And then it's like, and then what?
Right. You know? So I'd like to remind restaurant owners, and I'm still answering the question from the perspective of a restaurant owner. Yeah. I like to remind restaurant owners that the restaurant industry was spun out of service to others. Yeah. The word restaurant comes from, it's like a French, like the root was like restore. Oh. And it was for like people traveling Europe, I think in France, and there would be points, I think every 50 miles, there would be a point where you could stop and restore and get soup and rest and restore. And then over time it became the public house. Yeah. You know, a pub. It's where you would go to, it was the OG internet. Right. You know, you got your news, you got your entertainment, you got your social. Right. The first social platform was the dining room floor of a restaurant. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And I think when you look at the history of restaurants and where the restaurant industry was born out of bringing people together to help them restore, to help them connect, to help them to be that third place between work and home, to be around the people you love and to be seen and valued by your community. Yeah. That's what it's about. And to kind of not lose sight of that, because I think that over time, with consumerism and like an increasingly more transactional world that we live in, it's become, you know, I need to get the awards to get the attention to drive the business to my restaurant. Another thing too is that there's more restaurants than ever before per capita, you know? So that's another real challenge, is that like there's hundreds of restaurants in a market competing for the same group of people where maybe 100 years ago or 50 years ago, or more like 50 years ago, there's probably 10 restaurants.
Yeah.
You know?
And we put like a McDonald's in the same category. Like we use the word restaurant to describe McDonald's.
Right.
And like a place in the mountain hills of Italy where you hike all day and then you eat what they serve you, you know, like
Right.
which are these mysterious.
Right. And now throw into that ghost kitchens and virtual kitchens.
Right.
So where you're literally leveraging, like, say, the celebrity of like Mr. Beast to sell a burger.
Yeah.
Which is, I go back to marketing as the bane of human existence, because
Yeah.
it's about using ego and influence and vanity metrics to sell. Like, that's all money coming out of your community.
Right.
That you could be investing with into literally your neighbor's business.
Yeah.
So I guess to transition.
Yeah. Tell us the future. Well, I mean, I don't want to derail your transition, but like, take me into the future of like, how are we fighting that?
Well, I'll take that into the future by answering the second half of that question of what do I want the consumer to
You're
know?
so good at keeping track of the questions I ask.
Well, thank you.
You have a very methodical, thorough mind.
But I think, well, I mean, I could let you keep on.
No, I mean,
complimenting me.
clearly you're a good
Don't
podcast.
stop,
I want you to talk.
Stop. No, I think so my evolution as the host of Restaurant Unstoppable, you know, I went out to go chart the path for independent restaurant owners, and I was like, well, maybe I need to go to the corporations and the franchises of the world to figure out what they're doing, because clearly I'm interviewing these award-winning chefs and restaurateurs that are barely making money.
Yeah.
And that was the reality of it. I was trying to be all inspirational and inspiring, and like, I was like, oh shit, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe I need to go to the people who've scaled to figure out what they're doing.
And I think these people deserve money, right?
What's that?
Well, I mean, speaking as you,
independents?
you're like, there's the people who are in it for like, there isn't anything wrong with making money, but you know, you're talking to all these chefs who are like, wow, they're really skilled. They're doing it for passion, but like they're having a hard time doing it financially.
Right.
And those are the people who you would maybe want to see.
Right.
Like, wow, how do we help them get success?
Yeah,
right?
so I would go to the bigger organizations to learn what the people have done that have cracked the code to figure out how to be profitable and to scale something. And then over time, if the pendulum swung in that direction, I'm starting to swing back to the independents now, because I've learned a lot. But I think that I also want the show to be a platform to create awareness for the consumer of what the reality is, because your experience with restaurants is the experience that the restaurant is creating for you, which is it's a curated experience. It's not reality.
Yeah.
So restaurant owners are very good about not complaining, about giving. I think it's the synonym. If you look at the synonyms for word hospitality, it's warmth, generosity, caring, communality.
Right.
All we do is we give, and we've given ourselves into a corner where there's literally there's no meat left on the bone to give.
Yeah.
And I think we need to start we need to start educating the consumer on like the real reality of the industry right now, because restaurants are closing left and right.
Right.
Because we can't compete with if we look at what marketing tells us, it's give the consumer what the consumer wants. And what the consumer always wants is more for less.
Yeah.
And we can't give anymore without losing something. And what we're going to lose is what the restaurant industry was born out of.
Right. Yeah, which is the little rest stops in France, baby.
Right.
Telling stories and all that.
The people who are passionate about service and giving. And I'm not saying that a bigger company can't achieve those things, but I don't know. I think we're at this point where we have to evolve, but we also can't evolve and lose sight to move away of what's truly special about the restaurant industry, which is, the people that are in it. I mean, that's why I started this podcast, because I love the restaurant industry because I love the people in it, and I wanted to work with those people. It's getting harder and harder for those people who are the socially, emotionally intelligent givers to make it. Yeah.
Well, I saw you had Caitlin on from Red's Good Vibes. Yeah. That made me very happy. And I don't know how like, she's an unusual example, obviously, because she's not like, it's all just, charity and for free, but that's an example of, it's 100% passion, right? We make sandwiches and food and we give them out for free to anybody, right? Like, she's not necessarily they're trying to self-sustain the thing, but no one gets paid.
Well, they're a 501c3.
Yeah.
So I think they donate food. The food is free, but their business model is they get people to say they'll host an event for your birthday party or your wedding. And when you book that catering truck, that money that they're earning is going back into purchasing food that they can give away for free.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you could look at you could look at like 80% of all restaurants and they could probably be classified as a 501c3 because they're just so generous. You know what I'm saying? Like they're constantly giving, they're not making, like if you're doing 5 to 10%, you're doing better than most restaurants in profit. Right. I'm not to crap on the 501c3 world or what Caitlin's doing. I think it's beautiful work. But there's a lot of charity that's associated with the restaurant industry. Think about when you are trying to raise money for your baseball team.
Yeah.
Where's the first place you go?
The pizzeria.
Yeah. You know, like the restaurant industry is constantly donating and like lifting up their communities.
Yeah.
So
what do you, I mean, you've basically said, like, you've given some good nuggets, but like the restaurants that you think balance these things really well, right? Balance the need to like make money, treat their people well, succeed financially and materially, but also, you know, demonstrate like the characteristics of restaurateuring that you think are fundamental and that more restaurants should do, and that maybe we've kind of got away from, right? Of like true hospitality, authenticity, a great experience, great food, people interacting with each other. Like the folks who thread that needle and who do it well, like what do they do? Like some of your favorite successes, I guess. What would you draw from them?
And I think that's a great segue into how I'm trying to evolve. So I think that when I started the podcast, I was focusing on the individual, like store level, individual level of what can you do in your restaurant. But when I'm learning, there's definitely a pattern, which is one reason why I wanted to come here today. Is that, you know, it's not, it's always the restaurant operators who choose to go further together, that who choose to look at the person down the street not as their competition, but their brother or sister in the trenches with, and like, what are you doing? What like pooling resources, whether that be, I'm actually going to be heading up to Conway in about a week to go talk to the Valley OGs, the Valley Originals, which is a collective of 25 restaurants that come together, and that I can only assume that they do things like purchasing, like they all buy together, so they have leverage on they can get better rates on the food that they're purchasing. They share best practices, they support each other. And I think, you know, I like to use Richmond, Virginia as an example. When I was down there, like, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, I noticed that I like to call it like business partner polyamory. Where like
we're
all
non-exclusive.
Like everyone's in bed with everybody business wise. And like you might know that you're an amazing chef, but I know that restaurateur down the street is an amazing cocktail like god. Like I'm gonna open a restaurant with that person, and they're gonna be in charge of the cocktail program, and I'm gonna be in charge of like the food. Oh, well, there's a baker over here. Well, let's purchase our bread from that baker. You don't have to be everything to everybody. You can help and support each other and go further together. So I think that is one message I'm trying to get out to restaurateurs across the country, is like, if you are an independent operator, go knock on the door of the restaurant down the street. Just start talking to them. Just listen. And then just do that and encourage it, and like host space to come together monthly and help each other reach their benchmark, share best practices. Because if you try to do it alone right now, it's going to be so much harder than if you choose to band together and pool resources, pool knowledge, pool talent. It's not about you beating the person down the street anymore. It's about sustaining the industry and lifting each other up.
Right. And you can almost understand, like, it's counterintuitive, right, to think of it as a non-zero sum thing, because like if someone's in my restaurant, they can't be in your restaurant, they can't be, you know, being a patron of two places at once. So it's the instinct to be competitive, or to be like, oh, those guys at Luigi's down, they got better pizza and I hate them, you know. Like I feel like that's always the instinct in business and in the world and things. But like, I love how you're talking about it. A big theme of this show, Eric, right? I mean, it's a material observation that I believe is true, right? That the world is not a zero-sum place. Like my life can get better without yours having to get worse, right? And I feel like that's an emerging theme of your work. Like these things that you're talking about, you know, restaurateurs working with each other or thinking critically about, okay, what do we do that's really special? You know, maybe we do a great bread and they have a great bartender, like leaning into their strengths and leveraging them and working together, like that actually get like to speak entrepreneurially about it. That's where wealth, like real wealth is, it's created, you're creating it. And we can, not to be like, you know, a fantasy economist type, but really we can, it's infinite, you know, like wealth is human creativity applied through systems that, you know, allow it to harness and grow. Right. And like restaurateuring is how many examples of, you know, creativity and doing all these cool things. Like if you can get a revenue stream by having, you know, a weird kind of sushi that looks a kind of certain way, you know, not to diminish it and to say, it should all be about how do we maximize the money we get from it. But like, I just like the way you're framing it as like, it's not zero sum. We can all grow together. And not only is it better, but it's also kind of necessary right now. Like in the long term, you should be cooperating more with other restaurants.
Right.
I like that perspective.
Thank you. And I know a lot of what you're trying to do with your show is to like share optimism. And I think that,
but it's not a denial of problems. It's what are we doing?
Yeah,
you know?
I think we're in a really exciting time. Like I like to beat up the internet and say like marketing is the bane of human existence, but at the same time, there's like it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, like information is more fragmented and free flowing than ever before. There are more resources out there than ever before to learn and to grow and to be a better version. There's more inspiration out there than ever before. So I think that the idea that, you know, there's more resources and more information and it's getting more and more difficult to be a shady organization because the shady organizations can get called out real fast.
Right.
We're also, so like this idea of, you know, Moore's law that technology is improving at an exponential rate. And I think that if we can, because we have access to this information and we choose to be conscious about this evolution in technology and about the progress of quantum computing and AI and bioengineering and like, this stuff can spin out of control, and whoever controls this technology can like either control it and use it to get even more wealthy, or we can be very conscious and like share information and choose to go into a future that works for everybody. Yeah. As long as the conversations are being had, like there's two paths to be taken right now. Yeah. And I think the fact that we know that there is a choice, is hopeful because in the past, you know, the kings and the rulers would own the technology. They would own the mills, the printing presses, and they would control the technology to get to advance and control the people. But now, because of this fragmentation of the information and the channels of information, like we can really collectively choose a future. We're more conscious than ever before.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we're also, as the world of like technology and those verticals of like bioengineering, AI, quantum physics, machine learning, all that stuff progress, humans are also a science and a technology. Yeah. And maybe we're not evolving exponentially like maybe with bioengineering we might, who knows. But we're learning more and more about where we came from like an anthropological approach of like, here's what life was like 10,000 years ago. Right. Here we're learning more and more about the science of the brain and what people need to be happy. Yeah. And we're realizing that the things that humans need to be happy are so achievable. Right. Yeah. Security, right? Physiological needs, security. I feel safe. I feel seen. I'm learning. I'm growing. I have purpose. Yeah. That's such low hanging fruit, dude. Yeah. And when you realize that, you start to prioritize things like what's more important, me making millions of dollars and having fame, or waking up doing exactly what it is I want to do every day. Yeah. And you only need to make the average person, I think like $70,000 to like $90,000, depending on where you are.
Yeah. There's a tapering off between satisfaction and income.
Money is a drug, dude. Like you can never get enough of it. You're just going to acclimate to that lifestyle, you know, but once you realize that what you really need is other people and purpose, bro, like
you're good to go.
But what's the challenge? Like what's the struggle? I think it's just educating people. Yeah. Like what matters. And I think that's why I'm optimistic. How are we doing on time?
Oh no, you're doing perfect. I was just saying, sometimes there was one time when the camera accidentally turned off.
I get it, bro.
And it only happened to me once and I'm like petrified, but no, we're doing great. Man, you're speaking my language right now, Eric. Like I did not expect this to be a conversation about like, you know, techno optimism, but it is, and I'm all here for it. No, because there are these real parallels, right? Like at the core of hospitality, as you point out, is like, it is about, am I facilitating an experience that is satisfying and meaningful and valuable to a real human being, right? On a fundamental level. And if the answer to that isn't yes, then eventually your restaurant won't exist, right? And like the intersection of all these things, I like that you pointed it out. I mean, even the notion of choice, right? In so many areas, like this is why I like taking the optimistic perspective. Like for every problem you can imagine, a lot of the times, again, not to be blasé about or patronizing to like, okay, it should be better, I get it. But like the fact that we're even having a conversation about, man, I'm not happy with how, this election was run, or I'm not happy about this, zoning in my town, like that you have the ability to complain and that, something violent won't happen to you, that there won't be retribution, that there is a notion of fairness, and that, your views matter, and that you can enact your values and beliefs onto the world. Like that's a very modern notion in many ways. And it's kind of like a fish being in water, and that like so many of our ideals and understandings of how the world work, like they are fundamentally democratic and rooted in notions of equality that I think would be very unusual to like a Roman senator, for example. Like
right.
you could go back in time and speak to like, I don't know, Cincinnatus, Cassius, whatever. And you could be like, hey, by the way, 2,000 years from now, there's going to be a place called America that on paper, in theory, is supposed to be a place that anyone can come to. It doesn't matter what you look like. And you can say whatever you want about anybody to anybody all the time, everywhere, forever. You can worship whoever you want. You can have guns. And now you can marry whoever you want, of any race, of any, sex or gender. And you can own property. And by the way, that's all true. And people don't kill each other all the time.
Right.
Most of the time, people are quite peaceful. Like they would think you were fucking crazy, like
right.
They would think that's insane. And yet we live it every day. And I think it's worth celebrating that even
for
a little
sure.
bit.
100%. I think we all tend to, as humans, we tend to focus on the things that are most fearful. You know? It's in human nature. Like there's going to be a lion behind that tree that's going to come out and eat me, but that's not the case anymore.
Right.
Unless you're like doing a safari, maybe you might look out for lions. But like we are always looking for what we fear, and we always tend to focus on the negative and the bad.
Well,
it's human
it's
nature.
rational, because the downside of death is permanent versus like noticing, oh, I have too many acorns. It makes sense to orient towards the negative, and it's a bias we have, but it doesn't mean it's an accurate view of the world.
Right.
That's why I publish good news.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, I think to kind of like round off some of my thoughts, I think in terms of like what I want to communicate today and why I'm
sorry,
optimistic.
you got me jazzed.
No, man,
but I love it.
It's good. But you're like spurring thoughts that are like that have been close to my heart recently, and in terms of like optimism. Right now, I think the consumer is basically in terms of marketing, the marketer is taught to leverage emotions.
Sure.
Right. To get people to think about status, or like, what do people think of me? Am I trending, or like, am I buying the materialistic things that make me look good to my peers? Am I getting a lot of value? Is it cheap? Is it convenient? Mm-hmm. Can I push a button and have it delivered to my doorstep? And we're like kind of in this ecosystem that we have no choice to be in.
Yeah.
Whether that be on social media, we have to be on these platforms to promote our business. We're in this ecosystem of vanity metrics, or whether I need something and I can go on to Amazon, and Amazon knows exactly what I'm looking for because it was listening to me and it's showing me the thing that I just have to push one button and have that delivered. I think that I'm a huge advocate for conscious capitalism.
Yeah.
And I think that if we have to leverage emotion for people to make purchasing decisions that are better purchasing decisions, if we put front and center, instead of like, fearful things, but more like, hey, like, do you want to feel good?
Yeah.
Do you want to be healthy? Well, the restaurant industry can give you those two things: the feeling good, being seen, being around your peers. And if you choose to support restaurants that are practicing sustainable farming and pulling goods and resources from the community, then you're making your community stronger, and you're putting good food into your body. And if you don't want to get cancer, if you want to live healthy, then those resources are there for you.
Right.
But what are your priorities as a consumer? Is it convenience? Is it new shoes every couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Is it fresh threads, or like some stupid thing you saw on Instagram that is funny? Like, where are you putting your money? Because the resources are there.
Right.
It's just a matter of prioritizing what's most important, your health and your community.
Yeah.
And if you want to be healthy and happy, we can all achieve that.
Yeah. Right.
It's in our reach.
It's not impossible at all.
It's not the government's fault.
Right.
It's not big corporation. At the end of the day, you vote with your money.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that.
What are your values?
Yeah. It's
vote with your money.
Reflection of your values.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm moderate,
Right.
like I'm in the middle, but like
Yeah.
I do get frustrated when I hear people point their fingers or say somebody needs to do something about this.
Right.
You need to do something about it. We all need to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's within our reach.
Yeah.
But I think we just have to be reminded of that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. So
I agree. And I think a good, not to get like too political, but it almost is like a little maddening sometimes, like we'll put it this way. One of my favorite guys online, he has this like Progress and Optimism newsletter, and his whole thing, he's like, I try and not, scream or get mad. I try and look at things, like zoom out, try and be rational and fair to everybody. And he's like, and that's what I'm trying to do in the digital realm, is like calmly stand on a street corner of the internet and tell everyone to, calm the F down. And sometimes people say that's never going to work. You got to get really mad and you got to scream. And he's like, but I'm just not gonna, I just can't. I don't think that's, like, wouldn't you rather be human oriented and try and really empathize with, okay, where are other people coming from?
Yeah.
Are they afraid? They don't understand you? Why not?
Where's the best place to do that?
Where? Yeah. Let me think. Somewhere where I could get some food and meet different people and have a drink and have a cool atmosphere. Is there a word for that?
Go to a restaurant.
What's that called?
And not hide behind a fake profile online and
Yeah.
to like be forced to listen to other perspectives. I think that's a big issue with the world we're in today, is like this, we're all forced digitally. We're so connected, right?
Yeah.
But we're not connected at all
Right.
with the people who are most important, our neighbors, our community, Yeah, man. I'm looking at the time and we're at an hour and I don't want to.
We can keep going a little bit if you
cool.
want.
I'm down.
I don't
down.
have a hard stop.
I'm really good at time management after 1,100 episodes.
Yeah, of course you
so
are.
I want
My
to
next
respect your
person's
time.
at 3:00.
Okay,
so we
cool.
can go a little more if you want.
Sweet.
Because I could talk to you all day. All right. One question I have for you. So it seems like it's important to you. Like, do you ever do your interviews virtually, or is it important that like you go to the place and you see them in real life?
So
And tell me
I
your thinking on that.
I started virtual because that's what I could do.
Yeah.
My whole podcast started with a USB microphone and
Yeah.
Skype.
Humble beginnings.
Yeah,
Skype.
that was within reach, And I think as soon as I could be on the road, as soon as I could sustain my lifestyle on the road, that's what I was doing. So for me, that was like, I want to say like 4 years in, 3 years in. And it started with me sleeping in my Honda Fit,
Yeah.
like traveling and just using the podcast to say, hey, I want to come to your city. If you're willing to host me, I'll prioritize your city. I just need a place to put my air mattress.
Yeah.
And that's what I would do. I would sleep in my tent in people's backyards. I would have my sleeping pad that I would put on the floor, and I would just go to where people were willing to receive me.
That's awesome.
Thanks,
by the way.
man.
That's so cool.
And I just keep on,
Good for you. Seriously.
Thanks, dude. But I do think it is important to have conversations in person, I
Yeah.
believe. My shows are 2 hours long because I feel like it takes really time. I think that,
Yeah.
and I love that your show is at least an hour long. I think there's too many podcasts that are like just going for like, again, they're using their,
I don't like them when they're bite-sized.
Right.
I don't even find that I get into the real conversation until like at least 30 minutes in with most people. You're good at it. And
Thank you.
Like you obviously have experience. So like I don't feel like I had that issue with it. It's not an issue. It's just, I mean, you know how it is. Like it's what, like when I first started doing these, I do more time now, but I learned that I need to block at least 2 hours out for the entire experience.
Yeah.
I don't just want to have people show up and start talking. It's like, no, I need to get to know you a little bit.
Right.
We do a little chitter chatter. Then we really start talking. It's like, if I had my, I would love to just spend an entire day with each person.
Right.
That would be
It's
ideal.
a lot of editing.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like you understand.
100%.
You've learned the hard way.
Well, I think we're meant, again, going back to how we're hardwired and how we're meant to be, we're meant to be present. And like,
Yeah.
when you were a traveler and you would go to a restaurant or go to not a hotel, but what do they call those?
An inn, a bed and breakfast.
Bed and breakfast,
Yeah.
or like like where you can just like get a room, a hostel or something
motel,
like
yeah,
that.
hostel.
Like you would have guests.
Yeah.
You'd show hospitality. You'd feed people. You think they're there for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and then they're going to bed? No, there would be like drinks would come out, and
Right.
like conversation would happen. You'd be there for hours talking. And I think that we're hardwired for that as people to have deep, meaningful, weighted conversation. But back to marketing is the bane of all existence. The reason why a podcast should be 30 minutes, according to most podcasting experts, is because of attention span, and everyone's jockeying for the attention of the listener.
Fuck that.
Well, yeah,
I don't
exactly.
care.
Well, it's about impressions in a given 24-hour day.
Yeah.
So the shorter the content, the more impressions, the more marketing influence you have on your platform.
You know what? Good for those people. That's not the show I want to do.
Right.
And it's not the show that you're doing.
So I think it's important to create awareness about that.
Yeah.
And to, like sometimes I think having a weighted long form conversation, the number one podcast in the world at a period was what? Do you know?
Isn't it still Joe Rogan?
I don't know if it's Joe Rogan and bouncing back between another one, but those go as long as 4 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
On average, 2.5 to 3 hours.
Right. Well, I think that's actually a really good, like you mentioned this earlier, and I again, you're good at taking the optimistic perspective, but like, again, it's the way it is. You can complain about it or understand like what's good, right? But like even people talk a lot now about like, oh, podcast, like it's the way people get their news and their information. And like, I understand, the downside of like, okay, it's harder for people to have a shared reality, but fundamentally, you're for people saying what they want to say in whatever format they want, or like you're not. And like, I have a hard time getting behind the idea that like, we are better off as society if there's only like 1 or 2 or 5, news outlets or channels or whatever. And that's everyone watches them and they think the same exact thing, right? That's how it was like 50 years ago, whatever.
Right.
And, and every time people talk about like, oh, everyone's attention span is like gone. And some of that's legitimate. Spending too much time on the phone's bad. I agree with that. But like, are you kidding though? But like these 4-hour podcast conversations they're very popular.
Yeah.
Because I think you're exactly right in that this is actually a thing that people are hardwired for. They want it.
Yeah.
And it's more complicated, right? Like it's not as simple to be, the phone's ruining our attention. It's like, I see much counter evidence against that with, the interest in podcasts and long podcasts.
Right. Well, what else is delivered through the phone? A podcast.
Right.
So like, you can use that tool, the phone, to get hits.
Yeah.
Like, 10-second hits of useless information.
Yeah. Dopamine.
Or you can use it to listen to an audiobook, listen to a long form podcast with 2 people having a genuine conversation, exploring optimisms, exploring perspective. And you have a choice.
Right.
So I kind of try to push against the world of social media. I think there's a lot of people that like encourage people to be more active on social media.
No.
There are benefits to promoting yourself. I get that.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, even the fact, like, I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way. Everything that isn't this, I hate it. Yeah. I don't care. Like there's, and again, it's helpful for tech to do some of the stuff. Like it'll transcribe episodes and that's great. But like, I really, when I'm doing the show, this is what I do it for. It's not so I can sit alone in my house later and be like, ooh, look at all these clips, you know? Like that's not, I don't care at all about that. So I want to maximize the time doing this and minimize. I have to share.
Jared Parisi, Sumadre Podcast. If you ever look to outsource your podcast editing and social media promotion.
Oh, okay.
It's great.
There you go.
There you go, Jared.
There's an opportunity, but yeah, I mean, that's, we share that in person thing. Like, this is a New Hampshire show. New Hampshire's not big. You can drive anywhere. So it's kind of, unless I really, really, really have to do it for some reason, like someone is not comfortable meeting in real life, like I only want to do it in person.
Yeah.
If I can help it.
Well, there's the conversation, but there's more like, what do they say? Like, conversation is only like 20% what you're saying or something. I can't
Oh
remember
yeah,
like the breakdown.
It's all body
Body
language.
language, tone.
Yeah.
You know,
My feet have been dancing this whole time.
right. I think it cuts deeper than that we haven't even realized, like pheromones, you know,
Yeah.
like we're just starting to figure that stuff out. Like I think that good intention,
You can smell my cologne today.
right. Or just, they now think that there is literal energy between two people. And when you come in contact, like
That's good.
it's crazy. Like
Yeah.
I want to learn more about the science, but like there's a brain in your heart.
I'm all in on the auras. I'm
Yeah,
not even
man.
kidding.
And like this like super condensed series of like nerve systems that like literally like radiate energy, and like apparently our hearts can communicate. You know, like I don't know the details,
I
so like don't
support this.
quote me.
No,
but
it's
like
a fact, and I support it.
I think there's just more going on, in that when you're in person, like you just can't beat
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and like the relationship will be better.
Yeah.
Like we'll probably grab a beer sometime.
I would love to.
Let's do it.
Well, no, I mean that's. I mean, again, it's like, well, what are you? It makes sense for what you're doing, and I think everyone should orient to do it more. But it's also like it's rational. Like it gets at the core of what restaurateuring and hospitality is about for you. You know, like you know what you don't ever do. Maybe some people do it, but like call your friends and being like, hey, want to get on Zoom and order takeout together and watch each other eat it virtually, right? No one does that.
Right.
Why would you do it?
Right.
Maybe a little bit in the pandemic, like for fun, but like it's a deeply inhuman thing to do.
Right. I mean, you look at this term like hunter gatherer, right?
Sure.
So like we hunt and forage, but I think like it should be hunt and forage and gather, because it's really about going out, getting the resources and bringing them back.
Yeah.
And I think that act of gathering, of coming together, pooling resources, choosing to go further as a tribe, supporting each other,
Yeah.
you know, I think that we're learning a lot about that. Like, you know, it's almost like a heartbeat, or like
Yeah.
a breath, like out, in, give, take,
I
you know?
like that.
And I think it's that rhythm of going, coming back. We have to come back,
You're right.
you know, like I think we've pulsed out into like the digital world.
Yeah.
And I think that we're starting to realize that like we can only go so far in that
There's
direction.
only so much that can give us.
And there's like a big return. There's a big gather coming, I hope,
yeah.
you know?
No, I think there is. I mean, I certainly see that. And I mean, I'm biased. So like, obviously, I would befriend people who aren't like all in on the metaverse or whatever. And I'm not I'm like super pro tech, by the way. But you know, there is an upper limit. I think like it should be there to facilitate real things in the real world.
Right.
You know, that's
There's just
my
no
belief.
replacing what's happening at this table right now.
No, there isn't. And that's just how it goes. All right, Eric. I have one question that I really did want to ask you. If you could just comment on it. And this again, it's gonna betray how little I know about restauranting and industry. I feel like there's a lot of media. Again, as someone who isn't like, I like going to restaurants, and you know, I have a good time, they're great. I feel like I've seen or heard of a lot of media, and you probably have an opinion because you talk about perception of restaurateuring, right? But like a lot of shows or movies or whatever, and they show restaurants or like, the working side of restaurants, and it's all about like, it's very intense. There's an intensity, there's a competition, there's like ferocity, I don't know if it's all from like Gordon Ramsay, like this is kind of his whole thing of like, he's really intense in the kitchen, he yells at people. And, there have been tons of movies, I feel like, Bradley Cooper was in this movie, and, he was in that movie, and he was like this really arrogant chef, and he was just like super proud of like, oh, like, it's almost like the level of pride and competition that people bring to like martial arts,
right?
People are like, oh, my kung fu is better than your kung fu, like show me your skills. And it's like, but you're making a souffle,
right?
Like how important could it be? So I don't know. I see this weird, like as someone who isn't a full-time restaurateur and who, I mean, I like to cook, but I'm not like, I need to make my whole life a restaurant level of passionate. I don't know. Can you kind of like explain or demystify some of that? Like, why are there so many shows about like chefs being super duper intense? Or even like, what's the show everyone's watching right now?
Bear.
The Bear?
Yeah.
Yeah, The Bear is all about this.
Well,
you know?
yeah. I think, again, back to, talking about like ego and like award culture and the restaurant. And I think those are examples of the restaurant industry getting far away of what it was meant to be.
Sure.
And it became about status and
But this
ego
is a
and
real
vanity.
thing. Like there are a lot of kitchens that are really like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point, I think that we're getting away from that as an industry. I think we've started to realize that, I think a lot of people got into the restaurant industry because of the TV shows, the cooking shows and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And they thought it was about the food, but the food is literally just one small element of the business. Like you're opening a restaurant. I hope you know how to fucking cook.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you do everything
It's like level
else?
1. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you lead a team? Can you do inventory? Can you do costing? Can you do purchasing? Can you do inventory management? Can you do labor management? Can you figure out your taxes?
Right.
Can you market your business? Can you scale a business? Can you be active in your community? Like there's so many all those things I just talked about are the things that will make you profitable.
Yeah.
Cooking is great. If you can't do it, if you can't get help to do it, and if you can't make it profitable, then you won't last.
Right.
So I think we have gotten away that the industry is very much about vanity. And I think food media had a lot to do with pulling the industry into a direction that wasn't good for the industry. And yeah, that's kind of one thing that I'm proud of with my show is I don't create a facade. I don't create a false reality. I try to really talk. If my job is to first and foremost support the industry, but if I'm talking people out of it, then I'm also doing a service.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, that totally answers the question. What are I mean, there's so many things I want to like. Whenever I talk to people who are experts in a thing, I always want to ask them like, do you have favorite media or shows? Maybe you don't because you've spent so much time talking to actual restaurateurs, but like, I don't know. I would like to hear you answer. Do you have any favorite like cooking shows or movies about restaurateurs? And if you don't say Ratatouille, we're ending the show right now. And also,
I will say I didn't watch the most recent episodes or seasons of The Bear. Typically,
I haven't even seen the show.
Yeah, when I'm trying to like relax, I'm typically not like watching, especially because media tends to your point, like it's a false reality and it just pisses me off when I watch it. But when I did watch the first 2 seasons of The Bear, and I thought it was really well done and tactful, and it addressed a lot of the issues, and it gave like a real honest perspective of what the industry's like, but they went to a lot of restaurateurs to tell the reality of the industry. And I think that was probably one of the first really well done through the lens of restaurant operators show that was produced.
Yeah. Well, it shows it's very popular.
Yeah.
So I think it shows that people they're hungry for that, and like, pun intended, in reality, right? In terms of like, they want authentic experiences, but even just the popularity of the show, I think, speaks to this market or audience for like, oh, if I'm going to consume media about restaurants, I don't know, I want it to be more real, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And I love me some Ratatouille. Don't get me wrong.
I think I've seen that. That's something that the rat holds the guy's hair and teaches him how to cook.
Are you kidding me? You're like Mr. Restaurant podcast?
I'm pretty sure it was a long time ago.
You got to go. All right. The next time I see you, I'm just going to have Ratatouille playing on my phone.
Okay.
Like we need to
sit at the bar together and watch a movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I usually do that. Like most of the time, it's actually unusual. Right now, I'm not having Ratatouille playing on my phone. It's one of the only times that's been the case. It's just on a loop all the time. All right. Final question for you. Tell me some of the, like what experiences, like a moment ago you said, this is one of the things I'm proudest of in my show and my work. Tell me more about that. Are there like some of your favorite restaurants or people that you've talked to, or episodes that you feel like really push the envelope or that you're proudest of, like experiences
Honestly,
that stick out to you?
No. I think, I don't know if it's because I've done over 1,100 episodes now,
Right.
and maybe I'm like a mother where they're all special to me. Like I don't have any favorite children,
pick,
But in terms of what I'm most proud of, I don't chase vanity metrics. The last question I ask all my guests is, who do you respect and admire and believe would make a great guest on the show? And I'm really trying to lean into the most honest form of journalism and marketing, which is word of mouth.
Yeah.
Just go talk to people,
Right.
listen, and like just just network and go. And like, that's where I am today with the podcast. My mission is to change the world through inspiring and empowering and transforming the restaurant industry. And I think the restaurant industry has transformative power. If we can find these people who are making a difference in their community, and we give the other restaurateurs an aiming point, a benchmark of what success in the industry can look like. And that's different for different people. But a restaurant owner's job is to give their team the picture of the job done right, what that looks like, and the tools and resources to do their job. Where does the restaurant owner go to get that? And I'm proud that I have curated this list and these stories, and I'm doing it with the listener in mind, not metrics, not chasing vanity, not just upcycling the same people that all the other media companies go to like, I'm not chasing numbers. I'm chasing reality. And I think that's what separates me from other podcasts, maybe. At least I don't want to say like in the restaurant, like, but I think generally speaking, I don't care about vanity metrics.
So, man, I love that so much. And it's very inspirational to me. I mean, I share a lot of your values around media and, you know, the things that I'm interested in doing with this show. It's 100% the same thing. You know, it's like my goal with Granted Goodness, again, I'm echoing the work of other people. I mean, your story about like, you know, in the class and like finding the niche of the show that you felt like, whoa, I'm creating the thing I want to see. That's exactly how I feel about this, of like, there is this constellation of people who, you know, are fed up and confused, you know, when it's like, okay, I see all the problems that are in the world, you know, and the media focuses on everything that's wrong. And I get why they do that, but it's not an accurate view of the world. And all these other ways that are, you know, measurable and real, like, it's a fantastic time to be alive, you know, like, it's not perfect. The world can be better than it used to be. It can get better still, right? And it can be an awful place right now. Like, those three statements don't cancel each other out. They're all true at the same time. And so we can still be grateful for the progress that's been made, and we can celebrate it, and it can orient us towards what's better and better and better, right? And like, that's what I want to contribute to. And I love New Hampshire with my whole heart, and I'm never leaving. And we're a really, really unique place, and we're full of really, really unique people. And like, there are infinite stories to tell here about that. And I just want people, you know, when they come across my content, however they do, just to question, like, they're so cynical. Everyone is so cynical about the world and the possibilities and the state of things, and and I just want, if I can just get someone to question it for a second, to be like, wait, oh, you know, maybe everything isn't so horrible and it has to be horrible forever, because, you know, there's 100 people who are on Granted Goodness and they were all really, really cool and authentic. Maybe I shouldn't be so cynical. What can I do to make the world, you know, like, that's it.
Yeah. I love that, man.
It's all authentic. It's exactly the same. It's what you're talking about.
I mean, relativity is powerful. The idea of relativity, you know, like, relative to the life we've run compared to those not so long ago. Like, we have it pretty good. And I think you're right. We lose sight of, like, we live better than most kings and queens that have come before us.
They dreamt of having ice cream like one time.
150 years ago, running hot water wasn't a thing that people had. Like, I take a hot shower most mornings. Like,
it's great.
How good do we have it?
Right.
You know, like, it's just like little things like that. And can we be better with like equality and equal opportunity?
Sure.
100%. But you think about where we were 50 years ago.
Right.
And while we're not perfect, we're absolutely making progress.
And there are many, many reasons to be optimistic. And I could talk all day. We got to have you back on, Eric.
I would love that.
And when you're in Conway, by the way, that's like where I live. I live in Tamworth.
Conway?
Well, I really live in Madison. Yeah, Madison, Tamworth are like 10 minutes south of Conway, New Hampshire.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'll be there in like the week after Thanksgiving.
Stop by my farm.
All right.
I live there.
I'd love that. For sure. Let's make it happen.
I'll show you the farm, and I'll give you some chicken eggs.
I'd love that. Some eggs on the road. That's like my go-to protein. So I am on the road full time right now.
Sure.
I do want your listeners to know that I started this podcast in New Hampshire. I've learned in my evolution that it's not about feeding more people into the funnel of relationships, but going back to your greatest hits and upcycling. So as I'm traveling in the country, I'll be leaving this December to head south. But over the past 3 months, I've been going deep in New Hampshire, reconnecting with past guests. So if you are a New Hampshire native listening to this and you want to hear from different restaurateurs on the Seacoast, I've had a bunch of people between Maine and New Hampshire on the show recently.
Listen to Restaurant Unstoppable, which I will link in the notes, and you should all listen to it because it's great. And we have, I mean, it's a perfect example, and I'm glad you're here, the many ways in which New Hampshire and New England, I mean, again, I play fast and loose with the New Hampshire thing. I could just as easily talk about people from New England, but there's so much here, like you.
Thank you, man.
And, a lot of great stuff going on. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you for this opportunity, man. It was fun.
Hey there, thanks for spending some time with us, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can learn more about today's guest and how to get involved with or support their work in the show notes. If you'd like to suggest a guest for the show or have any story tips for our Good News in New Hampshire newsletter, shoot me a message at hello@granitegoodness.com. Music for this episode was provided by the band Sneaky Miles, who hail from Newmarket, New Hampshire. Until next time, I'm the creator and host of Granite Goodness, Andy DeMeo. Thanks for listening.